we had a grudge match to settle in Houston, Texas, as we saw the WBC champion O'Shaquie Foster take on Raymond Ford in a super featherweight championship bout.
And I think between O'Shaquie Foster and Raymond Ford, there was genuine dislike.
It started off really fun too, because O'Shaquie Foster threw Raymond Ford out the ring in the very first round.
O'Shaquie Foster right now in boxing has been the only fighter to call out Shakur Stevenson.
Shakur and Foster do have history. There's that sparring picture that they took a couple years back.
It seems like Foster is really confident that he can beat Shakur Stevenson. So maybe he knows something that we don't.
However, even though I wouldn't mind that matchup, I would prefer if Foster stayed at 130 and tried to take on the unified champion and Emanuel Navarrete, because there's always been debate about who's the best guy in the division. Welcome back to another episode of the Last Round Podcast, where we cover everything from traditional boxing to influencer boxing and everything in between. Today's episode, we'll be going over O'Shaquie Foster's majority decision win over Raymond Ford, as well as going over the return of Dmitry Bivol. But before we get into the episode, make sure to like and subscribe and follow us on all forms of social media. Lastly, we're trying to build up a community on Discord, and you guys joining would be greatly appreciated. Now, diving into the episode, we had a grudge match to settle in Houston, Texas, as we saw the WBC champion O'Shaquie Foster take on Raymond Ford in a super featherweight championship bout, in which O'Shaquie Foster retained his championship status and defeated the young Raymond Ford. This fight was dramatic in the build-up, lots of high tensions, high stakes, and at the end, Foster reclaimed his status as one or two, or maybe one or the second best fighter at the super featherweight division. Thoughts about this fight?
I was super excited about this fight. I was really excited because, I think, we've been following the sport and we've been within the sport for many years now. And, I feel like we can kind of tell when the two of the fighters are kind of either beefing because they're trying to sell the fight or because they really don't like each other. And I think between O'Shaquie Foster and Raymond Ford, there was genuine dislike that I think for the hardcore boxing fans, they were excited because they had a feeling that, these guys were going to give it their all. These guys were going to put in 110% in the training camp, and then they were going to go out there, and try to perform as best they could. There was genuine dislike between each other because, Raymond Ford claims that he had tried to hit up Foster for some sparring, and then the day of, Foster just kind of like brushed it aside, and that rubbed off to Raymond Ford in the wrong way. O'Shaquie Foster has had, a very good year, very good past few years, and so he feels like he's on the top of the world. People rank him number 1, number 2 within his weight class. So much, and this has given him so much confidence that the fact that he has been calling for Shakur Stevenson. O'Shaquie Foster right now in boxing has been the only fighter to call out Shakur Stevenson. And so I think there was, all of those elements put in together that, when it came to fight night, it was super entertaining.
Yeah, it was definitely a great fight. It started off really fun too, because O'Shaquie Foster threw Raymond Ford out the ring in the very first round. So it was a great fight, competitive. It was very competitive, especially in the first half of the fight. I thought both guys were landing some good shots. Foster would win one round, and then Ford would come back and win the next round. So real competitive at the beginning, but I think at the end it showed excuse me, it showed that Foster has more experience, and he ended the fight a lot better.
Yeah, I think for me, I think that was basically the key fight of the fight, was the fact that the experience was going to come into play. Eddie Hearn, in a post-fight interview, he was saying that the fact that, this is Raymond Ford's, second or third time being in a title fight. For O'Shaquie Foster, he's been in there for, 8 or 9 world title fights. So, obviously the experience was going to, be more on Foster's side. But, I mean, did you see the shape that Raymond Ford came in? He came in ready to go. I mean, he looked like in the best shape of his life for this fight, and there was good reason as to why. And, even though he did lose, he lost a very super competitive fight, super close fight, a fight that, he wasn't being outclassed. He would win some, he would lose some. And then I think at the end, the experience came in and, Foster did his thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Foster definitely showed why he is the WBC champion at the super featherweight. We were talking about it last episode that personally for me, I'm a big fan of, not a big fan, but I'm a fan of Shakur Foster, especially after his fight of the year contender a couple of years back against Rocky Hernandez in that fight down in Mexico. So it showed to me that Foster, not only can he outbox you the way he outboxed Stephen Fulton last year, but he can also beat you in a dogfight the same way he beat Rocky Hernandez. So I was rooting for Shakur Foster. I was glad he got the win, but definitely, yes, online, especially people were going back and forth in between rounds, stating like, "Oh, this fight's really competitive. Could go either way right now." But definitely for sure, the second half of the fight was when we really saw the experience come into fruition, and Shakur Foster definitely was able to get more shots and assert his dominance, while Raymond Ford, on the other hand, seemed a bit more fatigued, a bit more winded, and you could definitely tell that the championship rounds were in favor of Shakur Foster, and ultimately the judges agreed. Some people weren't in favor of the judges' scorecards. One of them had a draw, 114-114. While we had one who had it 116-112, and then lastly we had a 118-110, and the 118-110 was a bit disputed online, stating that didn't really, show the true nature of the competitiveness of the fight, especially the first half when Raymond Ford was at his best. But are you guys in favor of that 118-110, or do you think it's a bit disingenuous to what happened on Saturday night?
I mean, yeah, that was kind of a super wide scorecard. You summarized it up. Like, it just didn't really reflect what we saw. I'm telling you, like, Raymond Ford, obviously, this guy is a fighter that, when you step into the ring with him, you're going to have a difficult time, trying to figure him out. But, what we talked about, Foster, just has that world championship level experience, and he's done super well now in these past few fights. So that was going to come into play. It seemed as though, he kept at a level where, he was just kind of barely being able to beat Ford. And then towards the end, he turned it up. And that really goes to show you, how ready Foster was. I'll talk about how the crazy physique that Ford had. Shakur Foster looked like he had zero body fat on him. He looked sharp, ready to go. And when it came down towards the second half of the fight, I feel like those results that he put in, that work he put into the training camp really reflected on Saturday night.
Yeah, the scorecards were a bit strange. I mean, how does one judge have the fight even, completely even, and then another judge only gave Ford 2 rounds? It doesn't really make sense. So when I was hearing those scorecards, I was a bit sus for sure. I don't think, I don't think it was a 10-2 fight. I also don't think it was a 6-6 fight. I think Foster won, and I agree with that third judge. 116-112, I think is good. 8 rounds to 4. You could maybe even give it 7 rounds to 5 because it was a bit close, but for sure the clear winner was Foster.
Well, with this being said, Foster retains his WBC status, champion at the super featherweight division, and ultimately called out Shakur. And let's keep in mind, Shakur back in January moved up to 140, where he schooled Teofimo Lopez in a wide unanimous decision win as he became champion in that new division. So people online were, first off, I don't know why, critiquing Shakur, stating how, this dude's really going to be fighting a 130 pounder, essentially calling him a weight bully, which has been a narrative online. Surprising to me that people are claiming that Shakur is a weight bully. I mean, I never really saw it that way, but I guess that's a narrative online. So people are going at Shakur, stating that his next opponent, he's going to go against a 130 pounder. But, I mean, Shakur and Foster do have history. There's that sparring picture that they took a couple years back, and there's always been back and forth between both camps stating about that sparring that they did a couple years ago. And, that's what kind of brewed this whole entire beef between Shakur and O'Shaquie, and not mentioning that Raymond Ford is buddies with Sugar Shakur. So O'Shaquie Foster beating Raymond Ford definitely did add more fuel to the fire in igniting this potential big fight for Foster as he looks to take down one of the top 10 pound for pound fighters in the world, and Sugar Shakur. Thoughts about that matchup?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. It's like you said, Rudo. No one is calling out Shakur Stevenson. Some would even say he's a little boogeyman, right? Because the guy's hard to beat. Top, I believe, like top 4 pound for pound fighter in the world right now. So he's on top of the world. He absolutely outclassed Teofimo. And, man, for Foster to get the win and then immediately call Shakur Stevenson inside the ring and say to his face, let's get this fight next, that was impressive. I can't lie. So maybe he knows something that we don't. That those two, they disagree about what happened in that sparring. Foster says that he made him quit. Shakur says he made him quit. So, we're never going to know. But it seems like Foster is really, really confident that he can beat Shakur Stevenson, and I'd love to see that fight.
Yeah, I think so too. It's always very exciting when you just have a guy who, Foster's a champion, right? But he's not well known. Shakur just kind of basically broke into the mainstream of like the boxing world, the boxing hemisphere. I feel like his recent performance, I mean, they sold out Madison Square Garden. They made some type of like record gate breaking numbers, and then he put a fucking masterclass performance against the Takeover. So, I think within a lot of people's pound for pound list, he's like maybe even top 3. It's like one of those things now. And so, when you have a guy like Foster who apparently sparred him a couple years back and who apparently is saying that he got the better of that exchange, it makes things a lot more exciting for us boxing fans. And a matchup between these two guys would be, awesome as well, because, it's a fight that the fans want to see. And I think, these guys are within the same weight class, although, Stevenson, jumped up a little bit. But that doesn't mean that he's a big 140 pounder. I mean, he looks like he barely made 140 pounds. So, Foster, I think he just has to take care of business at 130. He has obligations, obviously, because he's the champion. And, the boxing fans want to see him go up against arguably the number 1 in that weight class, and that's Emanuel Navarrete. So these guys have to get it on. And then, eventually we're going to see O'Shaquie Foster and Shakur Stevenson in the ring later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also I feel like it's not fair for people criticizing Shakur, saying that he's like being a weight bully because he's going to fight this guy that's 2 divisions lower. First of all, Shakur was fighting at that weight class before, at 130. So, I mean, he's not a big guy. And also, it's Foster that's calling him out. Shakur isn't out here cherry picking a guy at 130. The guy at 130 is calling him out. So, like, as a man, he's like, hey, we can get it on, So, I feel like that's not really genuine to be mad at Shakur for, entertaining this fight.
Yes, and I think that gives us like another element. So it's, this, we have a smaller guy on paper trying to call out this guy who's, weighs more than him. And I think going back to the fight that we saw Saturday night, Shakur Stevenson and Raymond Ford are buddies. So, we are journalists at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. So I was scouring hours and hours through just Twitter, and apparently, what the streets are saying is the fact that, Shakur Stevenson, he's obviously, he's a guy that doesn't run away from the smoke, but he claims that, or that's what the people are claiming. He sent his boy, Raymond Ford, to go test the waters out to see if Shaquie Foster is on his level. I don't know if that's true, obviously, but that's what I've been seeing online.
Personally, I don't think Foster is at Shakur's level. I think Shakur is just a different level. He's clear elite, one of the best fighters on the planet, but Foster definitely does have high pedigree, and honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing a Shakur and a Foster showdown. I would imagine it'd be at 135, because let's keep in mind that there was talks or rumor talks between Raymond Murataya and Shakur a couple months ago, but that's been scrapped off since Murataya is confirmed to be taking Robson Conceição later this summer. So the fight was set to be at 135. And so Shakur can make the 135. I think he's also said in past interviews that he's able to still make the lightweight division. So if anything, if a Foster fight does come into fruition, I wouldn't be surprised if it's at 135 and Foster is forced to move up to a new division. But however, even though I wouldn't mind that matchup, I'd actually like it too. I would prefer if Foster stayed at 130 and tried to take on the unified champion and Emanuel Navarrete, because there's always been debate about who's the best guy in the division. Is it Shakur Foster? Is it El Vaquero Navarrete? I mean, people have always been discussing this, and I think it's the perfect time now, especially with Foster's motion. You know, he's beginning to get new fans, new eyeballs to his career, and people are starting to realize who he is. And Navarrete, I mean, he's got the Mexican crowd behind him. He just became a unified champion at the weight division, giving us once again another highlight performance in his career as he took on the quote-unquote during the time boogeyman, Sugar Nunez. So I think that's the matchup that I would prefer to see. I don't mind Shakur and Foster, but I think we have to see who really is the best fighter at the super featherweight division, whether it's Shakur Foster or Vaquero Navarrete.
Personally, for me, we're gonna see that fight, Shakur Stevenson or Shakur Foster. But we as boxing fans, we have to get in line. You know, we have to wait for that fight. The fight that I really truly want to see is the different clashes of styles with Emanuel Navarrete and Shakur Foster. I mean, within the past few recent years, you know, it seemed as though Emanuel Navarrete was kind of like on shaky legs. It seemed as though he would have a good fight, and then his next fight would be kind of questionable. But now, with him returning to 130 and seeming as though that he's gonna go back and campaign at that weight class, he established himself as, you know, probably the number one guy. You know, he went and unified for a different belt, so now he has two belts, 2 out of the 4. And in that fight, he looked spectacular. He put on a performance. You know, that's the typical Navarrete that everybody is accustomed to seeing. On the other side, we have Shakur Foster, who has just looked incredible in the past few fights. And with this win on Saturday, you know, I think everybody's kind of riding that wave of Foster seems to be that guy. Foster, you know, people are putting him number 1 and number 2. And so, you know, he's had a very difficult road getting to the position where he's at right now. But, I mean, when a guy has to climb from the very bottom and get to the position that he's at right now, that makes him that much more dangerous. So, I mean, with these two guys fighting later down the line, I think we can see a potential fight of the year candidate.
Yeah, I agree. You know, there's definitely some unfinished business at 130 for Shakur Foster. The only thing that I see getting in the way is that Lomachenko return, you know, and the word on the street is he is targeting Navarrete. And I could totally see Navarrete's team picking the Lomo fight, if that's actually possible, then the Foster fight first. So that's the only little wrench that I see right now. But it also seems like Foster would prefer to fight Shakur, which is interesting because I thought he was going to be more vocal about calling out Navarrete, but nah, it looks like he has his eyes set on Shakur. So, but I don't know. I'd prefer definitely to see Navarrete and Foster. It has to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I did forget about that. I mean, Lomachenko's apparently eyeing a return, but until he specifically says something, and until one of these main boxing outlets says something, then it's only word on the street. Also, I think we also have to take into consideration that O'Shaquie Foster is the WBC champion, so we'll have to see what Mauricio Suleiman wants for his fighter. He's gonna have to see what the 3 or 5% that he's gonna charge Foster for Emanuel Navarrete or Stevenson. Which one of them is gonna be higher? And I guess just kind of depending on how if Shakur has another fight later down the line, or if Navarrete decides to fight against Lomachenko. But I mean, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, Foster just fought, so I'm expecting him to not come back until later this year. I mean, if Navarrete decides to wait later down the line, I don't think it's hurt him too bad. But I think he's a guy that, I think it's better for him to keep him a little bit more on the busier side.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to see what happens. The super featherweight division is once again getting motion. And it all really stems on what the champions decide to do regarding O'Shaquie Foster and Emanuel Navarrete specifically. So hopefully we can get some unifications. I'd be more inclined to watch that in development. And the return of Lomachenko definitely does bring eyes. And I think it shows the vision that Lomachenko's coming in. I mean, he always stated he wanted to be undisputed. And the Devin Haney fight was the closest shot he got at it. And he came up short in a very controversial scoring. So this is definitely what I'm seeing, that he sees 130 as a better fit for him, in the aspect of him not being that small compared to the other champions, and also just based on the how the division is going. I mean, you already have a unified champion in there. He's going for that unified champion, and if he's able to be El Vaquero Navarrete, he can acquire 2 belts right off the bat in his return. So it's definitely interesting to see where the super featherweight is going, but I'm really intrigued, and I think later down the line this year we'll see the plans for the other champions. So we also caught Kakase in there as WBA champion, I believe. So we'll definitely see how the super featherweight division unfolds later down the line.
You, Pablo, just personally, who would you like to see Foster fight next? Navarrete or Stevenson?
Oh, I said it. Yeah, I said Vaquero. I'd rather see motion down at super featherweight. The unification. I'm always going to vote for unification rather than the fighter going out to a different weight class and fighting there, because I think it's important to get some movement, to not hold up the division, especially if you're the champion right there. Definitely, I like to see unifications in the division to see who really is the best fighter in whatever division it is. So I would definitely go for a Vaquero Navarrete fight for O'Shaquie Foster later this year. But I'm not opposed to Shakur being the next guy. But yeah, so that was our thoughts on the O'Shaquie Foster and Raymond Ford grudge match, settled by O'Shaquie Foster, as he retained his WBC super featherweight status as champion and looks forward that Shakur showdown down the line. But let's move forward to the second segment of today's episode. We had the return of the light heavyweight king. Dmitry Bivol returned back after a back surgery injury from last year, as he took on his mandatory and a one-sided mismatch affair where he retained his IBF, WBA, and WBO championship status over in Russia, and now eyes a big fight down the line. First off, thoughts about the return of Dmitry Bivol.
Yeah, I like to say that I don't have too many regrets in life, but I think turning the clock to Saturday, I would have loved to have put $1 million on Dmitry Bivol to get the unanimous decision victory, because that fight was just one-sided. Like, I had no idea that. So obviously I didn't know who the other guy was, but I had a feeling that maybe Bivol was going to take like at least 1 or 2 rounds of like, hey, I might lose him, but I'm just going to see how my body feels, how my back feels after this long layoff. No, he got right to it. From the very get-go, he just dropped his opponent, and then I think it really just kind of dictated the pace of the fight for the entire fight. And so, I mean, I feel like Bivol, it doesn't seem like though Bivol took like a long layoff. It seemed as though, he just got right back in there and just did his thing.
Yeah, that's what you like to see, of course. Bivol, after that layoff, there's always questions that are going to be asked, about the pain and if he's okay. And he looked great. He had to do this fight because I believe it was mandatory for one of his belts. So, I mean, get this out the way. Shake off the cobwebs. And then now it's time. There's two potential big fights that we can see. I saw the Ring posted. Beterbiev trilogy or a David Benavidez fight. Now, me personally, you got to give it to David Benavidez. And I'm sorry for Beterbiev because he is low-key getting thrown to the side. I'm sorry about that. But as a boxing fan, I need to see David Benavidez versus Dmitry Bivol.
Yeah, I mean, hold your horses, Asa. I mean, obviously we're going to get that fight, but down the line. I think, we were just talking about obligations, either Bivol is an actual fighter and wants to smoke, or he's a liar. He's the guy who, was going to give Beterbiev his immediate rematch. Sadly, the champion, had an injury that he had to take care of. But, now with this comeback fight, I mean, might as well go for Beterbiev later down the line. I mean, he sustained 0 injuries. I don't even think he got hit really on Saturday. So what better thing to do than to be a man of your word and fight your Russian pal, Beterbiev.
Yeah, that was, always the topic of conversation, whether or not Beterbiev or Benavidez would get the shot at Dmitry Bivol. And Beterbiev and his team have been waiting patiently. And I wouldn't even say patiently because they all have been throwing shots at Bivol, claiming that he's not a man of his word for honoring the trilogy, especially after Beterbiev gave him an immediate rematch after the first fight. So let's also keep in mind Beterbiev's older, 41 years old. He's not getting any younger. There was recently some new training footage of Artur Beterbiev in the gym. So there's that. I don't know what that entails, if he's going to get a new fight, just a stay inactive fight, because based on what I remember, I don't think he's fought since the Dmitry Bivol rematch. So he's been out of the ring for a while. Understandable. He is 41 years old. He can't be fighting 3-4 times a year. But it goes to show, I mean, that Beterbiev is staying ready, and I know him and his team want that trilogy against Dmitry Bivol. Benavidez, on the other hand, let's keep in mind, he just recently became champion at cruiserweight, and I believe in an interview stated that he doesn't see the fight with Dmitry Bivol happen until sometime next year, just because of the weight, that he'd have to lose and whatnot. And that started debates and arguments online stating how David Benavidez is essentially too big for the light heavyweight division at this point already. So they're saying, can he even make the 175 weight limit? Is he already too big for that? Did he already outgrow it? So, if it does happen, it won't happen until next year. I'm sure Dmitry Bivol wants to get another fight in this year, at least sometime at the end of it. So it's just, a matter of timing, I feel, at that point.
Look, Benavidez has always been a bigger guy. I mean, this is even his highest weight ever recorded, going up to cruiserweight. At the age of 13, he was 300 plus pounds. So, Benavidez has always been a big guy, but he's always been disciplined for the most part. So, he did state that he would need some time to kind of get his body acclimated to the lower weight class again. It is what it is. All he has to do is drink 3 gallons of water daily and he'll get there. But, this guy, there's a lot of wave riding behind Benavidez. I think, just like I was talking about Shakur breaking into the mainstream, it seems as though Benavidez is now getting his flowers that, he finally deserves. I think he was kind of in the shadows of Canelo Alvarez. I think, he was next in line to fight him, but it just never went that way. One can say politics, the other one can say, Canelo was afraid to fight Benavidez. It is what it is. Benavidez, we're obviously going to see that fight later down the line, him and Bivol, but I think the way things are going on right now, at cruiserweight and light heavyweight, seems as though a lot of these sanctioning bodies are wanting to exercise, their mandatory fights for these champions. It seems as though Benavidez has to now defend his belt against, the other champion at the cruiserweight. And then Bivol, if Beterbiev is ready to sign the contract, then he's going to sign the contract and fight Bivol. And no one else is going to call out Bivol other than Beterbiev. So what best way to do it than later down the line, 2026?
Yeah, we shall see. I think for sure it'd be the honorable thing to do, give Beterbiev that trilogy. But I don't know, that the Benavidez fight sounds a lot more exciting. And hopefully that's not true, that Benavidez is too big now for 175, because there's still, that fight against Bivol is great. And if we lose that because he's too big, I'm going to be really sad, Like, we have to see that for undisputed. And, yeah, I don't know. And, of course, there's great matchups at the cruiserweight as well. But I think all the smoke is at 175 right now.
Yeah. I think it's very funny that right away in the post-fight interview of Benavidez in his last fight, he was saying that, I can make the weight, but I just need time. I think it's so funny that one fighter, every fighter's body anatomy is so different from everyone else's that, like, in one fight, he's already like, slow your horses. Like, I thought I was going to maybe campaign at this weight. Maybe, if the money is good, then I can go back down, because he's still the champion. Mm-hmm. Another guy that's kind of like in the similar boat is Keyshawn Davis. It seems as though after one fight, he's ready to move up to 147, and get all the smoke up there. So, between you guys, so you guys don't want to see Benavidez and
Apataya?
No, not Apataya. Bivol?
No,
not Bivol. So you guys want to see Bivol against Benavidez better than Beterbiev?
Mm. Yeah, it's the more exciting fight, and also, look, if Bivol beats Beterbiev again, they're gonna say it's the age. It's always gonna be the age argument for Beterbiev if he loses. It was the age when he lost the rematch against Bivol. So once again, if he does fight him and he does beat him, they're gonna be like, he's a lot older now. He's aged him out. Whereas if Bivol beats Benavidez, you're talking about Benavidez, who he's ranked in the top 10 pound for pound as well. And people, he's in the prime of his career. He's been looking absolutely destructive his past couple fights. So he's going to get a lot more credit for beating a fighter like Benavidez than beating current Beterbiev, even though beating Beterbiev is still a good achievement. You're talking about an elite fighter, the third best fighter at the 175. But I think there's a higher risk and a higher reward by beating David Benavidez. And I think, honestly, the styles are going to be just a lot more entertaining. Benavidez is going to go in there to, destroy. Like, he's going to go in there just purely aggressively on Bivol and just try to drown him. And it's going to be interesting to see how Bivol is able to deal with Benavidez' style and find ways to neutralize his offense, because Benavidez has one of, if not the best, offense in boxing today. So I rather see that fight than see a Beterbiev trilogy. But I wouldn't mind the Beterbiev trilogy at all.
Yeah, man, we've gotten Bivol and Beterbiev twice already, right? I want a new flavor. I want something new. I want to watch something new, and that's why that Benavidez fight just excites me a lot. And listen, who knows? Maybe in that trilogy, Beterbiev can win. Imagine that. That would flip. That would flip the script like crazy. Where now, Beterbiev is the top guy. So, we never know, but for sure, I want to see Benavidez.
Look, I get that. I think it's the points that you guys have been making. It's a new flavor. It's something different. I think these guys are. They seem to be like almost unstoppable, right? It seems as though no one can really beat them. But when two fighters at the elite level are 1-1, if that's the scoreboard, we have to see the tiebreaker. You know, we need to see the trilogy between these two guys. I don't want to look if Bivol doesn't fight Beterbiev and he decides to fight Benavidez. That means we're never going to see the trilogy, and then possibly we're just going to see Beterbiev like. No one's obviously, at the ripe age of 41. No one's still calling out for a fight against Beterbiev. He's just going to be sitting on the sidelines and then just kind of taking a fight maybe here or there, maybe to fight for a belt again. But it's like, if he doesn't get this fight with Bivol, then, might as well retire. And it seems as though Beterbiev, even at the age that he's at right now, he's still very much motivated to become world champion. But most importantly, get his leg back, against the younger guy. And so I think Beterbiev has one last hoorah in his fight at the elite level, and I think it has to be against Bivol.
Yeah, it's like what y'all were saying. It's the honorable thing to do to give Beterbiev his trilogy, and I do agree that 1-1 on the scoreboard, we definitely do need to see the tiebreaker. But it doesn't look like Bivol is really in a hurry to give Beterbiev a trilogy. So we're all gonna see what happens these next couple months and see how Bivol decides to return. Also, Beterbiev, like I said, recently had a little training clips drop about him being back in the gym. So maybe we're getting close to a Beterbiev return as well, getting a tune-up fight in there to shake off the ring rust, since he hasn't fought since Dmitry Bivol. So it's gonna be interesting to see how the 175 plays out. But one thing for sure, and I've been saying that for a while, but I believe that David Benavidez is the best guy at the 175. I think he beats both Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol, and the sooner we can see those matchups, the better. So so y'all can see how good of a fighter David Benavidez is, and y'all can stop giving him shit for being this and that. So I think a Beterbiev or a Bivol and Benavidez fight would be the best fight at the division so far.
Yeah, we're just gonna have to wait and see how things progress. But yeah, we're just gonna have to wait and see and how things go. We also have to, we talk about these sanctioning bodies, wanting to create mandatories, for the champions. I'm pretty sure Bivol is the WBA champion. That president of the WBA has to enforce that mandatory against him and Beterbiev. Like, we have to see it. We'll better fight than now. I don't want to wait 50 years from now and be like, man, I really wish these two Russian guys would have, fought it out and see, who the best man was.
Yeah, we'll definitely see down the line this year, same as O'Shaquie Foster and Shakur, and the plans for them. It's going to be the same for the light heavyweight division regarding Bivol and what route he decides to take to defend his unified status as champion at the 175 light heavyweight division. But we'll definitely see, and I hope no matter what, I think it's going to be a good fight for Dmitry Bivol. But I think we covered everything that we wanted to cover in today's episode. Let us know down below your thoughts or actually prediction in case of a showdown between Dmitry Bivol and David Benavidez. Also, let us know what you would prefer to see Dmitry Bivol do: fight Beterbiev or fight David Benavidez. And also let us know your reaction to O'Shaquie Foster calling out Sugar Shakur after his majority decision win over Raymond Ford in Houston, Texas this past weekend. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on all forms of social media. We are on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Lastly, we're trying to build up a community on Discord, and you guys joining would be greatly appreciated. This was Pablo, and I was Rudo Nasa, and this was the Last Round Podcast. Thank you for watching.